The coldest part of drowning isn't the water. It's hearing your own blood discuss your life insurance before your lungs fill. I'd raised them, fed them, sent them to college, paid for weddings, and there they stood on Miller's dock, calculating percentages while I sank. But the Navy taught me something my family forgot. Dead men don't file lawsuits. Ghosts don't freeze bank accounts. And grandfathers who survive murder attempts don't forgive. They prepare. At 76, people look at you differently. They see the wheelchair, the trembling hands, the slow shuffle from room to room. They see weakness where strength used to be. My family saw an obstacle between them and $11 million. What they didn't see was the retired Navy rescue swimmer who'd pulled 47 drowning sailors from the Pacific over 3 decades of service. That's the problem with assuming age erases capability. It doesn't. It just makes people stop looking for it. The evening started innocently enough. My son-in-law, Marcus, suggested a family outing to the lake. "Get some fresh air, Dad," he said, using that patronizing tone people reserve for the elderly and the confused. The sunset's supposed to be beautiful tonight. My daughter Patricia stood beside him, eyes not quite meeting mine. I should have recognized that look. I'd seen it before, the last time she asked to borrow money she never intended to repay. But I wanted to believe. After my wife Rachel died 2 years ago, I wanted so desperately to believe my family still wanted me around for reasons beyond my bank account. My grandson, Tyler, was already at the dock when we arrived. Hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the October wind. 24 years old and already carrying the weight of poor decisions and poorer friends. I tried to guide him the way I once guided young recruits who didn't know a life vest from a flotation device. He wouldn't look at me either. The wheelchair bumped over the wooden planks of the dock. Marcus pushed, his grip firm on the handles. Too firm. The kind of grip you use when you're committed to a course of action. When hesitation might mean failure. I felt it then. That cold knowledge settling into my bones. Colder than any ocean water I'd ever trained in. This wasn't a family outing. The sun hung low over the water, painting everything in shades of amber and blood orange. Beautiful, just like Marcus promised. The kind of sunset you'd want to see before you died. "Right here's good," Marcus said, positioning my wheelchair near the edge. The dock extended 20 feet over the water. Deep water. I knew, because I'd fished here with Tyler when he was 8, teaching him to cast, to be patient, to respect what lies beneath calm surfaces. Patricia moved to stand beside Tyler. Not close enough to comfort, but close enough to be complicit. Marcus stayed behind me. That's when I heard it. The words that confirmed what my instincts already screamed. "Once this is done," Marcus whispered to Patricia. "Not quite quiet enough. We'll have access to everything. The life insurance, the accounts, the property. $11 million, maybe more. Are you sure about this?" Patricia's voice, thin and afraid. "We don't have a choice," Marcus replied. "The creditors won't wait. If we don't—" "I know," she cut him off. I didn't think it would be like this." Tyler shifted his weight, shoes scraping against wood. Can we just get it over with?" My heart hammered against my ribs. Not from fear. From rage, so pure, it tasted like copper. These 3 people, who I'd sacrificed for, who I'd loved unconditionally, were discussing my murder like a business transaction. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheelchair handles. I had perhaps 3 seconds to decide. Fight or play dead. The Navy taught me that sometimes survival means letting the enemy think they've won. I let my body go slack. Head lolling forward in that way people do when they've given up. When they're too old and tired to fight anymore. "He's asleep," Tyler said, voice cracking. "Dad, he's asleep." "Better that way," Marcus answered. Then came the push. Not gentle. Not apologetic. Hard and decisive. The way you'd shove a broken appliance off a loading dock. The wheelchair tilted. The world spun. I heard Patricia make a small sound. Something between a gasp and a sob, but she didn't scream for me to stop. Didn't cry out a warning. She just watched. The water hit like a fist. Cold. Yes. But I'd trained in waters colder than this. Waters that would kill an unprepared man in minutes. The wheelchair dragged me down, metal and leather, pulling me toward the bottom like an anchor designed specifically for my body. Above me, distorted through the water, I saw 3 silhouettes against the dying light. "He's gone," Marcus said. He sank fast. "Oh God," Patricia breathed. "Oh God, what did we just do?" "What we had to do," Marcus said firmly. "Now, listen carefully. We were never here. We dropped him off at home after dinner. Tomorrow morning, Tyler, you'll go check on him and find him missing. We'll search. We'll call the police. Someone will eventually find the wheelchair in the lake." "What if someone saw us?" Tyler's voice pitched higher. "No one's here. I checked. The marina's closed for the season. By the time they find him, it'll just look like a tragic accident. Old man in a wheelchair rolled too close to the edge. My lungs burned, not from lack of oxygen yet, but from the effort of controlling my breathing, of not gasping, of staying calm while 20 feet of lake water pressed down on me. I'd held my breath for 6 minutes during my qualification trials. That was 40 years ago, but muscle memory doesn't fade, it just slows down. I had time. The wheelchair settled on the muddy bottom, wheels sinking slightly. I unbuckled the strap across my chest. The motion practiced and calm despite the darkness. My fingers found the release mechanism, pressed, pulled, free. I pushed off from the wheelchair, angling my body parallel to the bottom, swimming slowly away from the dock pilings. The underwater visibility was poor, but I didn't need to see. I needed to think. They would wait. Standard procedure for people committing murder, making sure the victim doesn't resurface, doesn't somehow claw their way back to air and life and testimony. So I swam deeper into the dark water, letting the lake swallow me whole. My lungs began to ache in earnest now. That familiar burn, the body's desperate message that oxygen was becoming scarce. I'd learned to interpret these signals decades ago, to know the difference between discomfort and danger. Not danger yet, just discomfort. I found what I was looking for, a thick piling from the old pier, the one they'd condemned 5 years ago but never removed. I surfaced in the narrow gap between the piling and the rocky shore, just my nose and mouth breaking the water, the rest of me hidden in shadow. Air flooded my lungs. Sweet, precious, stolen air. Above me, perhaps 30 feet away on the main dock, I heard their voices clearly now. "How long do we wait?" Tyler asked. "Another few minutes," Marcus answered. "Just to be sure." "I can't believe we actually did this," Patricia said. Her voice sounded hollow, scraped clean of emotion. Shock, maybe. Or the early stages of guilt. "We did what we had to do," Marcus repeated. "Your father was going to leave everything to that maritime museum. Everything. We would have gotten nothing." "He told you that?" Patricia asked. "His lawyer let it slip last month. Some endowment in Rachel's name. He was going to sign the papers next week. So, that was it. Not just greed. Panic. The desperate flailing of people who'd counted on an inheritance and found the rug pulled out from under them." I almost laughed. Almost. The Maritime Museum comment was a lie I'd told specifically to gauge Marcus's reaction. A test he'd failed spectacularly. "We should go," Tyler said. "Someone might come." "The marina's closed," Marcus said again. "But yes. Let's go." I heard footsteps on the dock, moving away. Heard a car door open, close. I heard an engine start. But I didn't move yet. I didn't trust it. I waited, counting my breaths, feeling the cold water leach heat from my body. Hypothermia would set in eventually. But I had time still. Enough time. 10 minutes passed. 15. When I finally pulled myself onto the rocky shore, my arms shook from effort and cold. My legs, weakened by age and 2 years of limited mobility after my stroke, barely held my weight. But they held. I stood there, dripping, shivering, alive. and stared at the dock, where my family had tried to erase me from existence. The underwater camera housing gleamed faintly in the last light of day. The new system I'd helped the marina install just 3 weeks ago, recommending the best models for low-light conditions, for capturing license plates and faces, even at dusk. They'd pushed me into the water without looking down, without checking what lay beneath the surface. That was their second mistake. Their first was assuming I'd go quietly. I had 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, before they'd expect the police to find an empty house and start searching, before they'd rehearse their grief and practice their shock. Time enough to become the ghost they'd created. Time enough to haunt them. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt underestimated or cast aside, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Not for me, but as a reminder to yourself that it's never too late to stand up. Your story isn't over just because someone else decided to write the ending. Now, let me tell you what happened next. The walk home should have killed me. 3 miles of back roads, soaking wet, body temperature dropping with every step. Most 7-6-year-old men would have collapsed halfway, succumbed to hypothermia or shock, or the simple mathematics of a body pushed past its limits. But I wasn't most men. The Navy had taught me that the mind quits long before the body does, that the difference between dying and surviving is often just the decision to take one more step, draw one more breath, endure one more minute of pain. So I walked, one foot in front of the other, water squishing in my shoes, clothes plastered to my skin like a second layer of cold. I kept to the shadows, avoiding streetlights and passing cars. A drenched old man stumbling along the roadside would attract attention, questions, and help I couldn't afford yet. I needed them to think I was dead, needed the head start that illusion would provide. My house appeared ahead, the porch light glowing warm and yellow. Home. The place where Rachel and I had raised Patricia. Where we'd celebrated holidays and weathered arguments, and built a life from nothing but determination and love. The place my daughter had just conspired to steal by drowning her own father. I approached from the back, using the spare key hidden under the third flower pot. The kitchen door opened silently. I'd oiled those hinges myself just last week, tired of the squeak that announced every entrance. Inside, the house held that particular silence of empty spaces. They weren't here. Hadn't come to check, to make sure, to cover any tracks. Too confident. Too certain of their success. I stripped off my wet clothes in the laundry room, every movement deliberate despite the shaking in my hands. Hypothermia was setting in, mild but present. I recognized the signs. Confusion at the edges of my thoughts. Sluggish coordination. The overwhelming desire to simply lie down and sleep. I fought it, hot shower first. Not too hot. That would shock my system. Lukewarm. Gradually warming, letting my core temperature rise slowly, safely. The water sluiced off me, taking lake mud and lake smell, and the last physical traces of my attempted murder. But not the memory. Never the memory. Under the water's heat, my mind sharpened. I needed to think like them now, understand their timeline, their plan, anticipate their next moves. They would wait until morning, show up separately, Tyler first, probably, the concerned grandson checking on Grandpa, finding him gone, his bed unslept, panic, fear, calls to Mom and Marcus. Then the search. The police. The questions. When did you last see him? Last night, after dinner. We dropped him home around 7. Lies rehearsed until they sounded like truth. Eventually, someone would check the lake. Find the wheelchair. Assume the worst. Tragic accident. Elderly man, diminished in capacity, somehow made his way to the dock alone in his wheelchair. Rolled too close to the edge. No witnesses. No evidence of foul play. Just another sad statistic. Another senior citizen lost to the vulnerabilities of age. Except I wasn't lost. I dressed in dry clothes, thick socks, and a sweater Rachel had knitted years ago. The familiar texture grounded me, reminded me why I was doing this. Not for revenge, for truth. In my study, I booted up the computer. My hands still trembled slightly, but from the cold now, not shock. The warmth was returning, bringing clarity with it. I pulled up my bank accounts first, checked the balances, the recent transactions. Everything appeared normal, untouched. But I knew better. I opened the filing cabinet, the one Marcus thought I'd forgotten about, the one where I kept copies of everything important. The power of attorney documents were there, the ones Patricia had asked me to sign last year, just in case something happens, Dad. I'd signed them after Rachel died, grief-fogged and lonely, wanting to believe my daughter cared about my well-being rather than my assets. The document gave Marcus authority over my financial decisions if I became incapacitated. I checked the date I'd signed, November 3rd, last year. Then I pulled out my personal copy and held it to the light. The signature was mine. The date was not. Someone had altered it. Photocopy, digital manipulation, something. The date now read March 15th, 8 months ago, right around the time Marcus's construction company had started hemorrhaging money. I'd heard about the failed contracts, the lawsuits, the investors pulling out. Patricia had mentioned it, in passing. Stress evident in her voice, but she'd waved off my concerns. Marcus has it under control, she'd said. Apparently, Marcus's version of control involved fraud and murder. I photographed the document with my phone, making sure the manipulated date was clearly visible. Then, I checked my life insurance policy. The original policy, the one Rachel and I had taken out 30 years ago, had a modest death benefit, $250,000. Enough to cover funeral expenses and leave Patricia comfortable, but not wealthy. I pulled out the folder, hands steady now, purpose overriding physical discomfort. The policy had been amended 3 months ago, according to the paperwork. Death benefit increased to $15 million. $15 million. I stared at the number, trying to comprehend the depth of planning this required. This wasn't impulse. This was premeditation. Months of groundwork. The signature on the amendment was mine. Perfect forgery. Almost. But I knew my own hand, the way I looped my R's, the slight hesitation before the final stroke of my name. This signature was too smooth. Too confident. Computer-generated, probably. Scanned from some legitimate document and pasted onto this one. I photographed this too. My phone buzzed. Text message from Tyler. Hey Grandpa, hope you got home safe. See you tomorrow. The casual normalcy of it turned my stomach. I didn't respond. Dead men don't text. Instead, I pulled up the security system on my computer. I'd had cameras installed after a spate of break-ins in the neighborhood 2 years ago. 4 cameras covering the front door, back door, driveway, and garage. Marcus knew about them. Had been here when they were installed. In fact, what he didn't know was that I'd upgraded the system 6 months ago. Added interior cameras. Small, discreet, hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames. The old cameras were obvious deterrents. The new ones were insurance. I pulled up today's footage, fast-forwarding to this afternoon. There, Patricia and Marcus, in my study at 3 p.m., 2 hours before the lake. I watched as Marcus rifled through my filing cabinet, while Patricia stood watch at the door. Watched as he photographed documents with his phone. Watched as he replaced everything carefully, leaving no obvious evidence of his search. They'd been looking for my will. I zoomed in on Marcus's face. No guilt there. No hesitation, just a cold calculation. The footage showed them leaving at 3:47 p.m. Showed Patricia, pausing at my bedroom door, hand raised as if to knock, then dropping it and walking away. Had she considered warning me? Calling it off? I'd never know. What mattered was that she hadn't. I downloaded the footage to 3 separate flash drives. Redundancy. The military had taught me that 1 copy was no copy. 2 copies was 1 copy. 3 copies was barely enough. Outside my window, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. Midnight had come and gone while I worked. My body ached from the cold water, from the walk, from the adrenaline crash that was starting to set in. But I couldn't rest yet. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. Thomas Brennan answered on the 3rd ring, voice rough with sleep. This better be good. Thomas, it's Jack Mercer. Silence. Then, Jack? Jesus. It's been forever. How are you? I need your help. I need a lawyer. What kind of trouble are you in? I looked at my reflection in the dark window. Pale, drawn, old, but alive. The kind where my family just tried to murder me for $15 million. Another silence, longer this time. Then Thomas's voice came back, sharp and awake. I'm listening. I told him everything. The lake, the wheelchair, the insurance policy, the forged documents. Told him in the clipped, efficient manner of a military briefing. Facts, timeline, evidence. When I finished, Thomas let out a low whistle. Jack, this is attempted murder. Fraud. Elder abuse. We need to call the police right now. Not yet. What do you mean, not yet? I mean, I need them to think they succeeded. I need them to be comfortable, confident. People make mistakes when they think they've won. This is dangerous, Jack. If they realize you're alive. They won't. Not until I'm ready. Thomas was silent for a long moment. We'd served together, back when lawyers were JAG officers and war was more than a metaphor. He knew how I thought. Knew when I'd made up my mind. What do you need from me? He finally asked. I need you to freeze my assets. Quietly. Make it look like routine estate processing. I need every account, every property, every investment locked down tight before they can touch it. I can do that. What else? I need you to get the footage from Marina Cove. The underwater cameras. They'll have recorded everything. I'll need a subpoena for that. Then get one. Use whatever connections you still have. Call in favors. I don't care. I need that footage secured before anyone thinks to erase it. Okay. I'm writing this down. What else? I looked at the flash drives on my desk, the documented evidence of betrayal. I need you to prepare for war. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my study, listening to the house settle around me. This place held 40 years of memories. First steps and graduations. Christmas mornings and quiet Sunday afternoons. Rachel's laughter echoing from the kitchen. Patricia's homework spread across the dining table. All of it is contaminated now by what they'd done. I could burn it all down. Take everything from them the way they'd tried to take everything from me. But that wasn't enough. I wanted them to understand. To know what they'd lost. To feel the weight of their choices crush them the same way that wheelchair had tried to crush me to the lake bottom. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Tyler. Good night, Grandpa. I stared at those two words. Wondered if any part of him had hesitated on that dock. If any fragment of the boy who'd once held my hand and called me his hero remained beneath the man who'd helped push me to my death. I hoped not. Hope would make this harder. I needed them to be monsters. Clean, simple, irredeemable. Because what I was about to do would destroy them completely. And I needed to believe they deserved it. Morning came with cruel brightness. I woke up on the couch in my study, neck stiff, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. The events of last night crashed over me, immediate and undeniable. Not a nightmare, reality. I checked my phone. 6:47 a.m. Tyler would arrive around 9, according to their script. The concerned grandson, checking on his grandfather. I had 2 hours to disappear. I moved through the house methodically, packing what I needed. Laptop, documents, flash drives, medications, changes of clothes, the framed photo of Rachel from our anniversary trip to Cape Cod, the one where the light caught her smile just right. Everything fits in a single duffel bag. Strange how a life compressed so easily when necessity demanded it. I left everything else untouched. Dishes in the sink from yesterday's breakfast. My reading glasses are on the side table. The crossword puzzle, half finished. Evidence of ordinary life interrupted. The hardest part was leaving Rachel's things. Her gardening gloves are still on the shelf by the back door, her favorite mug in the cabinet. The impression of her everywhere, like light through stained glass. But I couldn't take her with me where I was going. At 7:30 a.m., I backed my car out of the garage. The old Buick that everyone assumed I could barely drive anymore, that Marcus kept suggesting I sell, for safety's sake. The same car that had seen me through 3 cross-country moves and countless adventures with Rachel. It started on the first try, engine purring like it remembered we had work to do. I drove to the Evergreen Motel on Route 9, 15 miles outside town. The kind of place that didn't ask questions if you paid cash. The kind where retired Navy rescue swimmers could hide in plain sight while their families planned funerals. The clerk barely looked up as I checked in. How long? A week, maybe more. $280 up front. I counted out the bills. Cash. I'd withdrawn from the bank ATM last week for groceries. Back when my biggest concern was whether to buy the name brand cereal or the store brand. Room 114 was exactly what I expected. Clean enough. Quiet. A window that faced the highway and didn't let in much light. Perfect. I set up my laptop on the small desk and connected to the motel's Wi-Fi. Checked my email. Nothing from Thomas yet, but it was early. Then I did something I hadn't done since Rachel died. I waited. The military teaches you patience. Teaches you that action without timing is just wasted motion. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing. So I waited while my family discovered my disappearance. I waited while they called each other, voices tight with manufactured panic. I waited while they called the police and filed a missing person report. I knew the script. Had heard it already in the words they'd exchanged on the dock. At 9:15 a.m., my phone rang. Patricia's name lit up the screen. I stared at it. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Imagined her on the other end, heart pounding, wondering if somehow I'd survived. If somehow I'd answer. The call went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, the phone buzzed with a text. Dad, where are you? Tyler went by the house, and you're not there. We're worried. Please call. The performance had begun. I opened my laptop and pulled up the local news website. Refreshed it every few minutes, waiting. At 11:43 a.m., the story appeared. Local man, 76, reported missing. The article was brief. Jack Mercer, retired Navy veteran, last seen by family members Monday evening. Wheelchair-bound, following a stroke 2 years prior. Family concerned due to his diminished mobility and recent confusion. They'd planted that seed carefully. I read the comments section. Neighbors expressing concern. Someone mentioned seeing police cars at my house. Someone else speculated about Alzheimer's, wandering, and tragedy. No one suspected murder. Why would they? My phone rang again. Marcus this time. I let it ring through. Then Tyler. The voicemails piled up, each one a masterclass in false concern. Dad, please, we're so worried. Just let us know you're okay. Grandpa, where are you? Everyone's looking for you. Jack, it's Marcus. Listen. I know we've had our differences, but Patricia is beside herself. Please, just call. I listened to each one twice, cataloging the subtle variations in tone, the places where real emotion bled through the practiced worry. Patricia sounded afraid. Good. She should be. Tyler sounded young, overwhelmed, almost convincing. Marcus sounded controlled, too controlled, the voice of a man following a script, hitting his marks. At 2 p.m., Thomas called. I've frozen everything, he said. Every account, every asset. Filed emergency motions, citing potential elder abuse and financial exploitation. The judge granted them based on the evidence you provided. How long before they find out? They probably already know. Marcus would have tried to access the life insurance by now and started making calls. He'll hit a wall of lawyers and legal holds. I smiled. Imagined Marcus's face when the insurance company informed him that the policy was under investigation, that no claims would be processed pending resolution of potential fraud. What about the marina footage? I asked. Working on it. The subpoena should come through by tomorrow. But Jack, there's something you need to know. The tone in his voice made me sit up straighter. What? I pulled Marcus's financial records. It's worse than we thought. He's not just in debt. He's drowning. Owes over $3 million to various creditors. The construction company is completely insolvent. He's got loan sharks circling. Loan sharks? The kind that don't accept bankruptcy as an answer. The kind that makes people desperate. I processed this. Understood now, the timeline, the urgency. Marcus hadn't just wanted my money. He'd needed it. Immediately. The kind of need that turns men into murderers. There's more, Thomas continued. I did some digging into that life insurance policy. The $15 million one? It was taken out through a broker who's currently under investigation for insurance fraud. Multiple policies on elderly clients who later died under suspicious circumstances. My hands tightened on the phone. How many? 4 in the last 3 years, all ruled accidental, all paid out without issue. Until now. Until now. Thomas agreed. Jack, this is bigger than your family. This is a pattern. The broker, the forged documents, the staged accidents. You're not the first. You're just the first to survive. The weight of that settled over me. Other families, other victims, other children who'd traded their parents' lives for insurance payouts. We're going to the police, I said. But not yet. I need more. What more could you possibly need? We have evidence of fraud, attempted murder. I need them to incriminate themselves. I need confessions, admissions. Something that closes every possible door, leaves no room for doubt or expensive lawyers or plea bargains. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. You're going to use yourself as bait. I'm already dead, Thomas. Dead men can't be bait. Jack, trust me. 1 more day, 2 at most. He sighed, the sound of a man who knew when he'd lost an argument. Fine. But I'm documenting everything. Every decision you make, every risk you take. When this goes to trial, I want a paper trail that shows you were acting rationally, deliberately. Understood. After we hung up, I stood and walked to the motel window. Outside, traffic flowed past on Route 9. People going about their lives, unaware that just 15 miles away, a family was pretending to search for a grandfather they believed they'd murdered. I thought about the other victims Thomas had mentioned. The 4 who hadn't survived their family's greed. They deserved justice too. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. Time to document everything. My testimony, given while my memory was fresh, while the truth was sharp and undeniable. I hit record. My name is Jack Mercer. I am 76 years old. Last night, October 15th, at approximately 6:30 p.m., my son-in-law Marcus Thompson, my daughter Patricia Mercer Thompson, and my grandson Tyler Thompson attempted to murder me by pushing my wheelchair off Miller's Dock into the lake. I spoke for over an hour, detailing everything. The conversations I'd overheard, the forged documents, insurance fraud, the financial desperation. Every fact, every moment, every piece of evidence. When I finished, I saved 3 copies. 1 encrypted and uploaded to cloud storage. 1 emailed to Thomas. 1 on a flash drive I tucked into my wallet. Then I did something that would have horrified my younger self, the one who believed in honor and direct confrontation. I started planning how to make my family destroy themselves. The truth is like water. You can push it down, hold it under, think you've drowned it, but it always finds a way back to the surface. If you've made it this far, you understand that survival isn't about strength. It's about patience. About waiting for the right moment to breathe again. Hit that like button if you know what it means to be underestimated. Now, let me show you what happened when the dead man started fighting back. The police found my wheelchair on the 3rd day. I watched the news coverage from my motel room, volume low, as divers pulled the twisted metal frame from Miller's Lake. The reporter's voice carried that practiced solemnity reserved for tragedies. Authorities fear the worst after discovering this wheelchair in 15 feet of water. The camera panned to Patricia, standing on the shore, Marcus's arm around her shoulders. She was crying. Real tears, or a convincing facsimile. Tyler stood apart from them, hands shoved in his pockets, face pale. I studied each of them, looking for cracks in their performance. Patricia's grief appeared genuine. Maybe it was. Maybe some part of her had loved me, even while helping to kill me. People are complicated that way. They contain multitudes of contradictions, love and murder existing in the same heart. Marcus looked appropriately grim, but his eyes kept moving, scanning, calculating. I recognized that look from my military days. The look of someone running tactical assessments while pretending to mourn. Tyler looked sick, green around the edges, like a man fighting nausea. Guilt, probably, or fear. At 24, he was still young enough for conscience to trouble him. The reporter continued. Mr. Mercer's family says he had been increasingly confused in recent months, following a stroke. They believe he may have wheeled himself to the lake, a favorite spot from his Navy days, and accidentally rolled into the water. Accidentally. That word cost them everything, because at that exact moment, Thomas was presenting the marina's underwater footage to a judge. The footage showed Marcus pushing the wheelchair, deliberately and forcefully, while Patricia and Tyler watched. The footage showed me unbuckling and swimming away. The footage that proved I was alive, coherent, and very deliberately letting them hang themselves. My phone rang. Thomas, the warrant's approved, he said. Police will make arrests tomorrow morning. All 3 of them. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, elder abuse. What about the broker? FBI's handling that part? Turns out your case connected dots they've been trying to connect for 2 years. They're grateful. You'll probably get a medal or something. I didn't want a medal. I wanted my daughter to not have tried to kill me. But we don't always get what we want. I need to do something first, I said. Jack, before they're arrested, before they lawyer up and stop talking, I need to see them. That's a terrible idea, probably. They could hurt you. Finish what they started. They could try. Thomas sighed. You're really going to do this? I am. Then at least wear a wire. Let me coordinate with the police. Make this official. No wires. No police. Just me and my family. One last time. Jack, I'm legally obligated to tell you this is stupid and dangerous. Noted. And personally obligated to tell you I understand why you're doing it. We hung up. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, hands folded, thinking about what came next. I could let the arrests happen, let justice proceed through proper channels, let lawyers and judges and juries do what they're designed to do, but that felt hollow, incomplete. I needed them to look me in the eye. I needed them to know I'd survived. Needed to see their faces when the dead man walked back into his own house. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was cruelty. Maybe it was just an old man's need for closure that made sense to no one but himself. I didn't care. At 6 p.m., I drove back to my house. The street was quiet, leaves skittering across pavement in the October wind. My house looked the same as always. Porch light on, windows warm with interior glow. But it wasn't the same. Would never be the same. I parked a block away and walked up through the backyard, using the spare key to let myself in through the kitchen door. Inside, voices from the living room. Patricia, Marcus, Tyler. All 3 of them. Perfect. I moved quietly through the kitchen, years of military training making my footsteps silent despite my age. Positioned myself in the doorway where I could see them, but they couldn't yet see me. They sat in various stages of distress. Patricia, on the couch, tissue in hand, eyes red. Marcus pacing. Phone pressed to his ear. Voice tight. I don't care what the insurance company says. My father-in-law is dead. The death certificate will be filed as soon as they find the body. Tyler sat hunched in the armchair, the one that had been Rachel's favorite, looking like he might vomit at any moment. They will find the body, won't they? Patricia asked, voice small. I mean, the lake isn't that deep. Surely. They'll find it, Marcus said, covering the phone. Give them time. What if? Tyler started, then stopped. What if what? Marcus snapped. What if he survived somehow? What if? He didn't survive, Marcus said coldly. He's 76 years old, wheelchair-bound, pushed into 15 feet of water. He's dead. But what if? He's dead, Marcus repeated, each word bitten off sharp. And we stick to the story. He was confused. We dropped him off. He wandered to the lake. Tragic accident. That's the only truth that exists now. I stepped into the room. Interesting theory, I said quietly. 3 heads snapped toward me. The silence that followed was absolute. The kind of silence that exists in the millisecond before a car crash, when time stretches and reality suspends and the mind can't quite process what's happening. Patricia saw me first. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tyler shot to his feet, face draining of all color. Grandpa? Marcus froze mid-step, phone still pressed to his ear. On the other end, a tinny voice saying, "Hello? Marcus? Are you there?" He lowered the phone slowly. "Jack. Hello, Marcus. You're... Apparently." Patricia made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. "Dad, oh my God, we thought. You thought I drowned," I finished. "You thought when you pushed my wheelchair into the lake? When you left me to sink? That would be the end of it." "We didn't," she started. "Don't." My voice came out harder than I intended. "Don't insult me by lying. Not now. Not after everything." Tyler was shaking. "Grandpa, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to, but you did." I looked at each of them in turn. "You stood on that dock and watched. You heard me hit the water. You walked away." Marcus recovered first, his lawyer's mind already working angles. "I don't know what you think happened, Jack, but Miller's Marina installed underwater cameras 3 weeks ago," I said conversationally. "High definition. Excellent low-light capability. I helped them choose the models. The color that had drained from Tyler's face now drained from Marcus's. The footage shows everything," I continued. "The push. Your conversation afterwards. You discussing the $11 million. Planning how you'd explain my accident." Patricia stood slowly, hands trembling. "Dad, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you needed money? That Marcus's business failed? That you decided murdering your own father was easier than filing for bankruptcy? It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "Marcus said we'd just scare you, make you sign over control of the accounts. I didn't know he was going to." "You were there," I said quietly. "You watched him push me. You said nothing, did nothing. That's a choice, Patricia. The same as pushing me yourself." She sank back onto the couch, crying in earnest now. Marcus's expression hardened. "You can't prove anything. The footage shows an accident. An old man rolling too close to the edge. It shows murder." I pulled out my phone. Pulled up the video file Thomas had sent me. Pressed play. The footage was crystal clear. The dock. The wheelchair. 3 figures. The shove. Marcus's voice, tinny but audible. "Once this is done, we'll have access to everything." Tyler's voice. "Can we just get it over with?" Patricia's silence, more damning than words. Then the push. My body hitting the water. The wheelchair sinking. Marcus's face as he watched. "He's gone." He sank fast. I stopped the playback. Tyler was crying now too. Face in his hands. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said. Marcus stepped toward me, and I saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. "You know what I think, Jack? I think you're bluffing. I think you're a confused old man who's going to have another stroke very soon." "Touch me," I said quietly. "And the video uploads automatically to the police, the FBI, and every news outlet in the state." He stopped. "I'm not confused," I continued. "I'm not helpless. And I'm not your victim. Not anymore." "What do you want?" Marcus asked, finally. "Want?" I considered the question. "I want my wife back. I want the family that loved me, instead of the one that tried to kill me. I want the last 40 years to mean something. I looked at Patricia. But we don't get what we want, do we? Dad, please. The police will be here in the morning, I said. Arrest warrants for all three of you. Conspiracy to commit murder. Insurance fraud. Elder abuse. Thomas has the documentation. The prosecutors have the evidence. You're going to prison. Tyler's crying intensified. Patricia just stared at me, tears streaming silently. Marcus's jaw worked. You'd really do that? Send your own daughter to prison? You'd really kill your own father-in-law for money? We stared at each other, the question hanging between us. Finally, Marcus's shoulders sagged. Not surrender, exactly. Just the recognition of defeat. How long did you know? He asked quietly. Know what? That I was planning this, that we were desperate. I suspected when you started pushing for power of attorney, I said. I knew for certain when you forged my signature on the insurance amendment. The signature was perfect, he said. More to himself than to me. Almost perfect. You missed the way I hesitated before the M in Mercer. He almost laughed. One letter. One letter. I agreed. That's the difference between getting away with murder and spending the next 20 years in prison. Patricia looked up at me, face blotchy and raw. Do you hate us? I thought about that. I really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't hate you. I hate what you became. I hate that money mattered more than my life. I hate that you looked at me and saw dollars instead of your father. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know that doesn't help, but I'm so sorry. It doesn't help, I agreed. But it's something. Tyler lifted his head. What happens now? Now? I looked around the living room, Rachel's room, the place where we'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays. Now, I leave. The police come. Justice happens. And you all figure out how to live with what you've done. Where will you go? Patricia asked. Away from here. Away from you. Somewhere I can remember what this family used to be before you destroyed it. I turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I said, not looking at them. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying hatred makes you old. And I'm old enough. Already. I walked out of that house for the last time. Behind me, I heard Patricia's sobs intensify. Heard Tyler saying something, words I couldn't make out. Heard Marcus, silent now, his plans turned to ash. I didn't look back. Chapter 5. Dawn of Accountability. The arrests happened at 6 a.m. I watched from my motel room, news coverage on my laptop. 3 police cruisers, 6 officers. Warrants executed simultaneously at 3 addresses. Marcus was taken from my old house, hands cuffed behind his back, face expressionless, the walk of a man who'd accepted inevitability. Patricia was arrested at her condo, still in her bathrobe, mascara from yesterday's tears smudged beneath her eyes. She didn't resist, just held out her wrists like she'd been waiting for this moment. Tyler was picked up at his apartment. The footage showed him stumbling, nearly falling, one of the officers catching him gently. He looked like a child who'd wandered too far from home and couldn't find his way back. The news anchor's voice was professional, but excited. Breaking news in the Jack Mercer case. 3 arrests this morning in connection with the attempted murder of a local Navy veteran. Attempted murder, not an accident, not misunderstanding. The truth, spoken aloud for the first time. My phone rang. Thomas? It's done, he said. I saw. Prosecutors are moving fast. Grand jury hearing scheduled for next week. With the video evidence and your testimony, they're expecting indictments on all major charges. How long? If convicted, Marcus is looking at 20 to life. Patricia, 15 to 20. Tyler might get a deal if he testifies, but still significant time. Numbers. Years. Lifetimes measured in prison cells. Jack, you okay? Was I okay? My family had tried to kill me. I'd survived. They'd been arrested. Justice was proceeding. I should feel vindicated, triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. I'm fine, I said. Liar. But his voice was gentle. Listen, you need to come in. Give your official statement. Walk the prosecutors through everything. When? This afternoon, if you're up for it. I'll be there with you. Okay. And Jack? The FBI wants to talk to you about the insurance broker. Your case broke open a major fraud ring. They've identified 8 other victims. Your evidence is helping them build cases against everyone involved. 8 other victims. 8 other families who'd valued money over life. I'll help however I can, I said. After we hung up, I sat in the motel room's silence, letting the weight of everything settle. This should feel like victory, like justice served and wrongs righted. But victory tastes different when you win against your own blood. I showered. Dressed in my navy dress uniform, the one I'd kept preserved in plastic for 40 years. The one I'd worn at Rachel's funeral. It still fits, mostly. A little tight around the middle, a little loose in the shoulders, but serviceable. If I was going to give testimony, if I was going to face prosecutors and police and the weight of legal process, I wanted to do it as the man I used to be, the man who'd served his country, the man who'd pulled drowning people from dark water, not the victim, the survivor. Thomas met me at the police station. He did a double take when he saw the uniform. Jack, seemed appropriate. You look good, like yourself again. We walked into the station together. The desk sergeant stood when he saw me, gave a respectful nod. Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming in. Call me Jack. Jack then. The detectives are ready for you. Conference room B. The conference room was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, cheap table, uncomfortable chairs. 2 detectives, 1 male, 1 female, both looking at me with expressions that mixed sympathy and professional intensity. Mr. Mercer, the female detective said, standing to shake my hand. I'm Detective Sarah Chen. This is my partner, Detective Mike Rodriguez. We're very sorry for what you've been through. Thank you. Can we get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. We sat. Detective Rodriguez opened a folder, pulled out a legal pad. We've reviewed the video evidence, he said. And the financial documents your attorney provided. Your testimony today will help us build the strongest possible case. Are you ready to begin? Yes. For the next 3 hours, I walked them through everything. Every detail, every moment, every piece of evidence. They asked questions. Gentle ones at first, establishing timeline and facts. Then harder questions. The kind designed to test my memory, my coherence, my capacity as a witness. Mr. Mercer, you claim you held your breath for several minutes underwater. At age 76, with a history of stroke, how is that possible? I was trained as a Navy rescue swimmer. Breath control was part of our core curriculum. Those skills don't completely fade, even with age. But you had a stroke 2 years ago. Weren't you wheelchair-bound? The stroke affected my mobility, not my cognitive function or my lung capacity. I used the wheelchair because walking long distances was difficult, but I could still swim. And you just happened to know about the underwater cameras? I recommended them. The marina manager is a friend. We discussed security upgrades last month. Detective Chen leaned forward. Some might say this is convenient, that you had perfect knowledge of where cameras were positioned, how to survive the water, how to escape. Some might wonder if you orchestrated this. I met her eyes. Are you asking if I wanted my family to try to kill me? Did you? No, I said quietly. I wanted them to love me. I got attempted murder instead. But I didn't orchestrate that. I just refused to die from it. She nodded, satisfied. Thank you for your patience with these questions. We have to consider all angles. I understand. More questions, more details, more reliving of the worst night of my life. Finally, after what felt like days, Detective Rodriguez closed his folder. I think we have everything we need. Mr. Mercer, your testimony is compelling and consistent. Combined with the physical evidence, we're confident we can secure convictions. What happens next? The grand jury will hear the case next week. If they indict, which we expect they will, trial will be scheduled. Probably 3 to 6 months from now. You'll need to testify again. I'll be there. Detective Chen walked me to the door. Mr. Mercer? Can I say something off the record? Of course. I've been doing this job for 15 years. Seen a lot of family violence, elder abuse, financial exploitation. This case is one of the worst. But you, she paused, searching for words. You handled this with incredible dignity. A lot of people would have fallen apart. I did fall apart, I said. Just not where anyone could see. She gave a small smile. Still, thank you for your service. Both to your country and to this case. Outside, Thomas waited by his car. How'd it go? Fine. They asked hard questions. I gave harder answers. You did good, Jack. We stood in the parking lot. October wind pulling leaves across the pavement. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber. What now? Thomas asked. Now I disappear for a while. Let the legal process happen without me watching every step. Where will you go? I thought about the cottage I'd seen online. The one on the coast, 30 miles from here. Small, quiet, far enough from memories, but close enough to testify when needed. Somewhere I can hear the ocean, I said. Thomas nodded. You need anything, you call me. Day or night. Understood? Understood. He hugged me then, quick and fierce. You're the toughest son of a bitch I've ever met. I just didn't want to die, I said. Most people don't have the skill or strength to back that up. You did. He drove away, leaving me alone in the parking lot. I stood there for a long moment, letting the reality sink in. It was over. The running, the hiding, the fear. My family would face justice. The broker and his ring of fraud would be dismantled. Other potential victims would be protected. I'd survived. But survival isn't the same as healing. That, I knew, would take longer. I got in my car and drove toward the coast, toward the cottage I'd called about that morning, toward something that might eventually feel like peace. The ocean was waiting. Justice isn't always satisfying. Sometimes it's just necessary. Sometimes you don't get closure, just consequences. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, thank you. Your time matters. Your attention matters. And if this resonates, if you know someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than the people who hurt them, share this. Be the voice that reminds them they can survive. Now, let me tell you about learning to breathe again. The cottage smelled like salt and old wood and possibility. I stood in the doorway with my single duffel bag, looking at the space that would be mine for the next chapter. However long that chapter lasted. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, living room with windows facing the water. Everything I needed, and nothing I didn't. The owner, Mrs. Helena Wu, was a widow my age. She'd shown me around with quiet efficiency, not asking questions about why a man my age wanted to rent a cottage alone so far from family. Maybe she recognized something in my eyes. The look of someone fleeing towards something rather than running from something. First month's rent, she'd said, holding out her hand. I'd paid cash. She'd handed me the keys. Ocean's rough, this time of year, she'd added. Beautiful, though. If you like that sort of thing, I do. Good. Then you'll fit in fine here. She'd left me alone after that. I unpacked slowly, each item finding its place in this new geography. Laptop on the small desk. Rachel's photo on the nightstand. Medications in the bathroom cabinet, lined up like soldiers at attention. When everything was settled, I walked to the beach. The shore was rocky here, not the smooth sand of tourist beaches. Waves crashed against stone, throwing up spray that tasted of brine and freedom. I stood at the water's edge, letting the foam cover my shoes, and breathed. Really breathed. The kind of breathing I hadn't done since before the lake, before the betrayal, before I'd learned that family could look at you and see only dollar signs. The ocean didn't care about any of that. It just moved, eternal and indifferent, wearing down mountains one wave at a time. I understood that patience, that relentless persistence. For the first week, I barely left the cottage. I slept irregular hours, waking from dreams where I was underwater, wheelchair pulling me down, voices above discussing my life insurance. But each time I woke, I was in the cottage, safe, alive, free. The nightmares gradually lost their power. I established routines, morning walks on the beach, afternoon reading, evening calls with Thomas to discuss the case's progress. The grand jury had indicted all three. Trial was set for January. Marcus got a high-powered attorney, Thomas told me during one call. Some hotshot from Boston. They're going to fight hard. Let them fight. They're going to attack your credibility. Claim you orchestrated this for attention, for money, for revenge. I know. And they're going to make Patricia sympathetic. Devoted daughter, manipulated by her husband, afraid for her safety. Was she? I asked. Afraid for her safety? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I don't know. She claims Marcus was controlling, that she went along with things because she was scared. There might be truth to that. Doesn't change what she did. No, Thomas agreed. It doesn't. Tyler had taken a plea deal. Testimony against Marcus and Patricia in exchange for reduced charges. He'd serve 5 years, maybe less with good behavior. Part of me felt relief at that. 5 years was survivable. Tyler was young enough to rebuild afterward. Another part felt betrayed that he'd gotten off so easily. But justice isn't about satisfying every emotional need. It's about consequences proportional to actions. Tyler had been weak, complicit, guilty, but he hadn't been the architect. That was Marcus. In my second week at the cottage, I started writing. Not for legal purposes. Not testimony or evidence or documentation. Just writing. Memories of Rachel. Stories from my Navy days. Reflections on family and trust, and the slow erosion of both. The words came easier than I expected, like they'd been waiting years to be released. I wrote about teaching Patricia to ride a bike, about her graduation from college, how proud Rachel and I had been, about the day she married Marcus, how I'd walked her down the aisle thinking she'd found someone who'd protect her. I wrote about Tyler as a child, his gap-toothed grin, the summer he spent with us, learning to fish, telling us about his dreams of becoming a marine biologist. I wrote about the slow changes. The visits became shorter, less frequent. The way conversations shifted from, "How are you?" to, "Do you need anything?" The way they stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. Writing it down didn't make it hurt less, but it made it clearer. Made me understand the gradual nature of betrayal. How it's rarely one moment, but 1,000 small moments that compound like interest. Mrs. Wu knocked on my door one afternoon while I was writing. "Brought you soup," she said, holding out a container. "You look like you haven't been eating." "I eat. Not enough." She pushed past me into the kitchen, started pulling out bowls. "Sit." I sat. She ladled out portions of what smelled like Chinese chicken soup, rich and complex. "My husband used to look like you," she said, sitting across from me. "After our daughter died. That same hollowed-out expression, like someone had scooped out everything important and left just the shell. I'm sorry about your daughter. It was 15 years ago. Still hurts, but differently now. Less sharp. More like an old scar that aches when it rains." We ate in silence for a while. "Whatever happened to you, Mrs. Wu said finally, it's not your fault. People blame themselves when loved ones hurt them. But you can't control other people's choices. Only your own. How did you know?" "I didn't. But pain recognizes pain." She stood, collecting the bowls. "Eat. Rest. Heal. The ocean helps with that. If you let it." After she left, I sat for a long time, thinking about her words. The ocean helps with that, if you let it. I walked down to the shore again as the sun set. The water was dark, almost black, reflecting the orange and purple sky. I thought about the lake, about sinking, about the cold water closing over my head while my family walked away. Then I thought about swimming. about muscle memory and training and the decision to survive. The ocean was different from the lake. Bigger, older, more honest in its danger. But it was still water, still something I understood. I took off my shoes, rolled up my pants, waded in until the waves reached my knees. The cold was immediate and shocking, but not unfamiliar. Had trained in worse. I stood there as the sun finished setting, as darkness claimed the sky, as stars began to appear, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let what happened define the rest of my life. Wasn't going to become bitter and broken and small. Rachel wouldn't have wanted that. The Jack Mercer who'd pulled 47 sailors from drowning wouldn't have accepted that. So I wouldn't either. I walked back to the cottage, feet numb from cold, but head clear. In the morning, I would call Thomas and ask about victim impact statements. Ask what I could say at the trial that might help other families avoid this. I would finish writing my story, not just for myself, but for anyone else who'd been betrayed by the people they trusted most. I would learn to live with the scars, not despite them, but because of them. Because scars meant I'd survived something that should have killed me. And survival, I was learning, was its own kind of victory. January arrived with cold clarity. The trial began on a Tuesday. I drove back to town the day before, checking into a hotel near the courthouse. Thomas met me for dinner, walking me through what to expect. Marcus's attorney is going to be aggressive, he warned. Robert Chen, brilliant lawyer, no conscience. He'll try to paint you as vindictive, confused, manipulative. Let him try. He'll bring up your stroke. Question your memory, your cognitive function. My memory is fine. I know that. You know that. But he'll plant doubt. That's his job. I pushed food around my plate, not hungry. What about Patricia? Different attorney. Julia Brenner. Specializes in abuse defense. She's going to argue Patricia was a victim too. Coerced by Marcus, afraid to refuse, traumatized by years of control. Is any of that true? Thomas shrugged. Probably some of it. Most abusive relationships have elements of control. It doesn't. No, he agreed. It doesn't. But it might reduce her sentence. The courtroom the next morning was exactly what I expected. Wood paneling, high ceilings. That particular smell of old buildings and older justice. I sat in the gallery, watching as they brought in the defendants. Marcus entered first, wearing an expensive suit, projecting confidence despite the handcuffs. He scanned the room, eyes settling on me for just a moment. No emotion there, just acknowledgement. Patricia came next, looking fragile in a simple blue dress. Her attorney had clearly coached her on appearance. The devoted daughter, bewildered by circumstances beyond her control. She didn't look at me. Tyler wasn't present. His plea deal meant separate proceedings, separate consequences. The jury filed in. 12 ordinary people who'd been chosen to decide whether a family could be held accountable for trying to kill their patriarch for money. I studied their faces, wondered what they'd been told, what they believed. Judge Margaret Ortiz presided, a stern woman in her 60s, who'd served on the bench for 20 years. She looked at the defendants with the expression of someone who'd seen too many families destroy themselves in her courtroom. The state versus Marcus Thompson and Patricia Thompson, she announced. Charges include conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and elder abuse. The prosecutor, District Attorney James Walsh, stood. Your Honor, the state is prepared to proceed. Very well. Opening statements. Walsh was methodical. Laid out the timeline, the evidence, the premeditation, showed the jury the underwater footage, which played on screens throughout the courtroom. I watched the jurors' faces as they saw Marcus push the wheelchair, saw several of them flinch, saw disgust register on their features. Good. Marcus's attorney, Chen, countered with reasonable doubt, argued the video was inconclusive, that physical assistance could look like pushing, that an elderly man in distress might have misunderstood intentions. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen said smoothly, This is not a case about murder. This is about a family tragedy, complicated by medical issues and misunderstanding. We will show you that Jack Mercer, while a sympathetic figure, has suffered cognitive decline that affects his perception and memory. Lies. Professional, polished lies. Patricia's attorney took a different approach. Acknowledged wrongdoing but framed Patricia as another victim. My client lived in fear, Brenner told the jury. Fear of her husband's temper. Fear of his financial desperation. Fear of what he might do if she didn't comply. Yes, she was present at the lake. Yes, she made terrible choices. But those choices were made under duress, by a woman who'd been systematically abused for years. The first day ended with testimony from the police. Dry, factual accounts of the investigation, the evidence collected, the arrests made. The second day brought the marina manager, who testified about the security cameras, about my help selecting them, about the footage's authenticity. Chen cross-examined aggressively. Isn't it convenient that Mr. Mercer just happened to recommend cameras positioned exactly where he'd later claimed to be pushed? I recommended comprehensive coverage, the manager said calmly. For the entire marina. But you discussed specific placement with Mr. Mercer? He's a Navy veteran with security experience. I valued his input. Or he orchestrated the perfect setup to entrap his family. Objection, Walsh said. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Ortiz ruled. On the third day, Thomas testified about the financial fraud. Walked the jury through the forged signatures, the manipulated documents, the inflated insurance policy. Chen tried to shake him, but Thomas had 40 years of legal experience. He didn't shake. Mr. Brennan, you've been friends with the plaintiff for decades, correct? Correct. So, your testimony might be biased in his favor? My testimony is based on documentary evidence, not friendship. But, you'd like to see your friend vindicated? I'd like to see justice served, Thomas said evenly. Those aren't always the same thing. The prosecution rested on the fourth day. The defense called their witnesses. Medical experts who testified about stroke effects, cognitive decline, memory issues. Chen walked one doctor through a hypothetical. Doctor, if a man had suffered a significant stroke, could he experience confusion about events? Possibly. Could he misinterpret actions? Yes. Could he even construct false memories, believing them to be true? In some cases, yes. No further questions. Walsh cross-examined. Doctor, have you examined Jack Mercer? No. Reviewed his medical records? No. So, your testimony is based on general possibilities, not specific diagnosis? That's correct. Thank you. On day 5, I was called to testify. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Walsh started gently. Mr. Mercer, can you tell the jury what happened on October 15th? I did, calmly, clearly, without emotion, just facts. The dock, the wheelchair, the voices, the push, the water, the survival. How did you escape? I unbuckled the wheelchair strap, swam away using my Navy training, surfaced in a concealed location and waited for them to leave. Why didn't you call for help immediately? I needed to understand what was happening. Needed evidence. Evidence of what? Evidence that my family had tried to murder me. Walsh showed the video again. Is this you in the wheelchair? Yes. Is that your son-in-law pushing? Yes. Your daughter and grandson watching? Yes. Walsh sat down. Chen stood. Mr. Mercer, you claim you held your breath underwater for several minutes. At age 76. After a debilitating stroke, do you expect this jury to believe that? I was trained as a Navy rescue swimmer. Those skills remain even with age. But you had a stroke, which affected my mobility, not my lung capacity or swimming ability. How convenient. Not convenient, I said. Fortunate. He paced. You recommended the exact camera system that would later capture this alleged incident? I recommended a comprehensive security system. The marina manager made final decisions. But you influenced those decisions? I provided professional input based on my military experience. Or you set a trap. Why would I trap my own family into attempting murder? Chen smiled. Perhaps you were angry about being placed in a nursing home, about losing independence, about feeling forgotten. I was never placed in a nursing home. But your family had discussed it, hadn't they? I paused. Once. Years ago. After my stroke. So you knew they saw you as a burden. Objection, Walsh said. Speculation. Withdrawn. Chen turned to the jury. Mr. Mercer, isn't it true that you're a wealthy man who was angry at his family for various slights, real or perceived, and orchestrated this elaborate scheme for revenge? No. No? So you didn't inherit $11 million from your wife's estate? The insurance settlement from my disability came to approximately that amount, yes. And you were planning to leave it all to a museum, cutting out your family entirely? I told Marcus that to gauge his reaction. It wasn't true. So you lied to your family? I tested their loyalty. They failed. Chen leaned forward. Or you manipulated them into a situation where you could claim victimhood and seize moral high ground. I looked him in the eye. They pushed me into a lake and walked away while I drowned. There's no manipulation there. Just attempted murder. The cross-examination continued for 2 hours. Chen tried every angle, every insinuation, every doubt, but I'd survived worse than aggressive questioning. I'd survived the lake. When I finally stepped down, I was exhausted but steady. The jury watched me walk back to my seat. I couldn't read their expressions. On day 6, Patricia testified. She cried through most of it, described years of Marcus's control, his anger, his financial desperation. I was afraid, she said, voice breaking. Afraid of what he'd do if I refused. Afraid he'd hurt me. Hurt Tyler. So I went along with things I knew were wrong. Did you know he planned to harm your father? Brenner asked. Not exactly. He said we needed to scare him. Make him sign over control. I thought that's all it was. When did you realize it was more? When we got to the dock. When I saw Marcus position the wheelchair. When I understood what he was going to do. Why didn't you stop him? I froze. I was terrified. I wanted to scream. To grab Dad. To do something. But I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. She looked at me then, eyes pleading. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'll never forgive myself. I know you can't forgive me either. But I need you to know I never wanted you hurt. I was just so scared. Walsh cross-examined. Mrs. Thompson, you claim you were afraid of your husband? Yes. Yet you never called the police? Never sought help? Never told anyone? I was ashamed. Or you were complicit? No. You stood on that dock and watched your father be pushed into the water. I was in shock. You walked away. I was terrified. You discussed the insurance money afterwards. Patricia's composure cracked. I know what I did. I know. But I was scared and confused, and I didn't know what else to do. You could have called for help. I know. You could have jumped in after him. I know. You could have done anything except stand there and let it happen. She dissolved into sobs. Walsh sat down. The defense rested. Closing arguments came on day 7. Walsh was passionate, but controlled. This case is about betrayal, about greed, about a family that looked at a vulnerable man and saw money instead of a person. The evidence is clear. The video is irrefutable. Marcus Thompson planned and executed an attempted murder. Patricia Thompson aided and allowed it. Chen countered with doubt. The state wants you to believe an elderly stroke victim with admitted memory issues orchestrated his own near-death experience to frame his family. They want you to ignore reasonable explanations and embrace conspiracy. Don't let sympathy cloud your judgment. Require proof beyond reasonable doubt. Brenner made Patricia human. My client made terrible mistakes. She's guilty of weakness, of cowardice, of failing to act. But she's not a murderer. She's a victim herself, trapped in an abusive relationship, making impossible choices under impossible pressure. Yes, hold her accountable. But remember, she's human, flawed, and deeply sorry. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 days of waiting. Of pacing hotel rooms, of wondering if justice would be served or if expensive lawyers and reasonable doubt would prevail. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, word came. Verdict reached. The courtroom filled quickly. I sat in my usual spot, Thomas beside me. The jury filed in, faces unreadable. Judge Ortiz addressed them. Has the jury reached a verdict? The forewoman stood. We have, Your Honor. In the matter of Marcus Thompson, on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find? Guilty. My breath released. On the charge of attempted murder? Guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud? Guilty. On the charge of elder abuse? Guilty. 4 times guilty. 4 times justice. In the matter of Patricia Thompson, on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find? Guilty. Patricia sobbed audibly. On the charge of attempted murder? Guilty. On the charge of elder abuse? Guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, how do you find it? A pause, longer than the others. Not guilty. Walsh had warned me this might happen. The jury might give Patricia one small mercy, acknowledging her lesser role in the financial fraud. I could live with that. Judge Ortiz thanked the jury. Set sentencing for 2 weeks from today. As they led Marcus and Patricia from the courtroom, Marcus looked at me one last time. Still no emotion. Just acknowledgement that he'd lost. Patricia didn't look at anyone. Just cried as they took her away. Outside, reporters swarmed. I pushed through them without comment, Thomas running interference. In his car, safe from cameras and questions, I finally allowed myself to feel. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just relief. Deep, bone-weary relief. We won, Thomas said quietly. Yes. How do you feel? I thought about that. Like I survived. That's enough, he said. That's more than enough. He drove me back to the cottage. The ocean was waiting. Accountability doesn't heal all wounds. Sometimes it just stops the bleeding. If you're still here, still watching, thank you. The hard part is over. Now comes the harder part, learning to live with what's left. One more chapter. Stay with me. Sentencing day arrived 2 weeks later with snow. Heavy, wet flakes that transformed the courthouse steps into something almost beautiful. Almost enough to make you forget why we were all here. I arrived early. Before the reporters, before the spectators. Just me and Thomas. Walking through falling snow, like soldiers returning to a battlefield. Inside, the courtroom felt different. Smaller somehow. The drama had ended with the verdict. This was just paperwork being read aloud. Consequences being formalized. Marcus was brought in first. Still wearing an expensive suit. Still projecting the confidence of a man who believed money would somehow save him. It wouldn't. Patricia followed. Looking smaller than I remembered. Prison orange, instead of her carefully chosen wardrobe. Hair pulled back. No makeup. Eyes hollow. She looked at me this time. Really looked. Not pleading, not apologizing. Just seeing me. Acknowledging what she'd done. I nodded once. Not forgiveness. Just acknowledgement that we'd both survived to this moment. Judge Ortiz took her seat, expression grave. Marcus Thompson, please rise. Marcus stood, shoulders back, chin up. A captain facing a sinking ship with dignity. You have been convicted by a jury of your peers of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and elder abuse. These are serious crimes that strike at the heart of family trust and human dignity. Do you have anything to say before I impose a sentence? Marcus's attorney whispered something. Marcus shook his head. No, Your Honor. Judge Ortiz nodded. Very well. Marcus Thompson, I sentence you to 25 years in state prison for attempted murder, to run concurrently with 15 years for conspiracy, 10 years for insurance fraud, and 5 years for elder abuse. You will be eligible for parole after serving 85% of your sentence. Additionally, you will pay restitution in the amount of $2.5 million to the victim. 25 years. Marcus would be 73 when released, if he lived that long. He showed no reaction. Just nodded once, accepting his fate. Patricia Thompson, please rise. Patricia stood shakily, her attorney supporting her elbow. You have been convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and elder abuse. While the jury found your culpability somewhat less than your husband's, particularly regarding the fraud charges, your actions were still reprehensible. A daughter's duty is to protect her father, not assist in his murder. Do you wish to speak? Patricia looked at her attorney, who nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Her voice was barely audible. I want my father to know that I'm sorry. That I'll spend the rest of my life regretting what I did. That I understand if he can never forgive me. But I need him to know that I loved him, that I still love him, even though I betrayed that love in the worst possible way. She turned to me, tears streaming. Dad, I'm so sorry. I said nothing. What was there to say? Judge Ortiz continued. Patricia Thompson, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison for attempted murder, to run concurrently with 10 years for conspiracy and 5 years for elder abuse. You will be eligible for parole after serving 60% of your sentence. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $1 million to the victim. 15 years. Patricia would be 63 when released. The court officers moved to escort them out. Marcus walked with his head high. Patricia collapsed halfway to the door. Had to be supported. I watched them disappear through the door. My daughter, my son-in-law, my family, gone. Jack? Thomas touched my shoulder gently. You okay? I don't know. We left through a side exit, avoiding reporters. Thomas drove me back to the cottage without speaking, understanding that some moments require silence. At the cottage, I sat on the porch despite the cold, watching snow fall into the ocean. Gentle white flakes meeting violent gray water. Destruction meeting beauty. I thought about Patricia's apology, about whether it mattered. She was sorry. I believed that. Sorry she'd been caught. Sorry she was going to prison. Sorry she'd destroyed her relationship with her father. But was she sorry she'd done it? Or just sorry it hadn't worked? I'd never know for certain. Mrs. Wu appeared with tea. She did that sometimes. Just showed up with warm drinks and quiet companionship. It's done? She asked. Yes. How long? 25 years for him. 15 for her. She whistled low. Heavy sentences. Heavy crimes. We sipped tea, watching the snow. My daughter got 3 years, Mrs. Wu said suddenly. For vehicular manslaughter. Killed a man while driving drunk. Served 18 months. I turned to her. You never mentioned. You never asked. And I don't talk about it much. But watching you go through this, I thought you should know you're not alone. That other people have had their families break them. What happened? With your daughter? She got out, moved across the country, calls on Christmas and my birthday. Sends cards. We're cordial. But the love died. You can't kill someone, even accidentally, and expect your mother to look at you the same way. Do you regret turning her in? Every day. And not at all. She smiled sadly. Complicated, isn't it? Loving someone and holding them accountable. Very. You did the right thing, Jack. After she left, I sat alone until the snow stopped and darkness fell. Inside, I pulled out my laptop and opened the document I'd been writing. My story. The full truth of what happened. I'd been saving the ending, waiting to see how the trial concluded before deciding how to finish. Now I knew. I wrote about the verdict, about the sentencing, about Patricia's apology and my complex feelings about it. Then I wrote the real ending. Not the legal one, but the personal one. I forgive them. Not because they deserve it. Not because it erases what they did. But because holding on to hatred would give them power over the rest of my life, and they've taken enough. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Patricia and Marcus will serve their sentences. I'll move on with my life. We'll probably never speak again. But I forgive them because forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. A way of saying, what you did hurt me, damaged me, nearly destroyed me. But it didn't. I survived. And I choose not to carry your betrayal for the rest of my days. I choose to live. I saved the document, backed it up 3 times out of habit. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Tyler. He answered on the second ring. Grandpa? Hello, Tyler. Silence. Then, I'm sorry. I know I've said it before. But I'm so sorry. I know. Are you okay? Getting there. I saw the sentencing, Mom, and Marcus. I know. This is all my fault. If I'd just said no. If I'd warned you. Tyler, I interrupted gently. You can't change what happened. You can only decide what you do next. What I do next is 5 years in prison. And then, I don't know. How do you come back from this? One day at a time. One choice at a time. One moment of being better than you were before. He was crying. I don't deserve your kindness. Probably not, but I'm giving it anyway. Because you're young enough to become someone different. Someone better. Don't waste that chance. I won't, I promise. Good. We talked for a few more minutes. Ordinary things. How he was adjusting. What he was reading. Small connections that felt fragile, but real. When we hung up, I felt lighter, not healed. Healing would take years, but lighter. I walked down to the beach one more time, letting the cold air clear my head. The ocean was dark and restless, waves catching moonlight like silver threads. I thought about Rachel, about what she'd think of all this. She'd be heartbroken about Patricia, devastated about the betrayal. But she'd also be proud that I'd survived, that I'd stood up for myself, that I'd refused to be a victim. Live, she'd say. Live fully and completely, and don't let them steal one more day from you. So that's what I'd do. I'd live. I'd write my story and help other families recognize the warning signs. I'd work with the FBI on the fraud ring investigation, helping protect future victims. I'd testify at Tyler's parole hearing when the time came, offering support for rehabilitation. I'd walk this beach every morning. I'd drink tea with Mrs. Wu. I'd read books and watch sunsets and breathe salty air. I'd be more than what they'd tried to make me. A victim, a paycheck, an obstacle to overcome. I'd be Jack Mercer, Navy veteran, survivor, man who refused to drown. The ocean rolled on, eternal and honest. I rolled on with it. The cottage hasn't changed much. Same weathered wood, same salt-stained windows, same view of the ocean that never stops moving. But I've changed, in ways both obvious and subtle. I walk easier now. Physical therapy and time have strengthened muscles that atrophy had weakened. I still use a cane sometimes, on bad days. But most days I walk the beach without assistance. The nightmares have faded. Not gone completely. Trauma doesn't work that way. But they come less frequently now. And when they do, I know how to breathe through them. Tyler was released 6 months ago, served 3 years of his 5-year sentence. Good behavior, genuine remorse, completion of every rehabilitation program the prison offered. He lives 2 towns over, working construction. We have coffee once a month. Awkward conversations that are getting less awkward. He's different now, quieter, more thoughtful. The consequences of his choices carved something permanent into him. Good. We all need to be carved by our mistakes. That's how we learn. Patricia has 7 years left on her sentence. She writes occasionally. Letters that I sometimes read and sometimes don't, depending on the day. The last one I read said she'd earned her GED in prison. I started taking college courses. Found faith, she claimed. Though, I'm skeptical of jailhouse conversions. But maybe it's real. Maybe she's genuinely changing. I hope so. For her sake, not mine. Marcus hasn't written, hasn't tried to contact me. I assume he's angry, bitter, convinced of his own victimhood. Some people never learn. Never accept responsibility. That's his burden to carry, not mine. The FBI prosecuted the insurance broker and his network. 13 people were arrested. 8 additional families came forward as victims. The broker got 40 years. My testimony helped. So did the documentary evidence, the pattern of fraud, the trail of bodies. Justice served. Not perfect, but real. I published my story 6 months after the trial. A small press, limited printing, didn't want fame, just wanted the truth documented. The book found its audience. Other seniors who'd been exploited by family members, caregivers, working to protect vulnerable clients, lawyers building elder abuse cases. I get letters sometimes, people sharing their stories, thanking me for speaking up. Those letters matter more than the verdict ever could. Mrs. Wu died last year. Peaceful in her sleep, the way she'd wanted. Left me the cottage in her will, shocked the hell out of me. You need a place where the ocean can heal you, her note said. This is that place. Take care of it. So I do. Paint the trim every spring. Fix the shutters when storms damage them. Plant the garden she always talked about but never started. The cottage is mine now, not rented, not temporary. Home. I'm 79 years old. My hair is completely white. My hands shake sometimes. I forget names more often than I'd like. But I'm alive. Every morning, I walk to the beach and watch the sunrise. Every evening, I watch it set. In between, I live. I volunteer at the VA hospital, talking to younger veterans about service and sacrifice and survival. I work with a local elder advocacy group, helping others recognize financial abuse. I exist, fully and completely. Sometimes I think about that night at the lake, the cold water, the voices discussing my life insurance. The moment I decided to survive. It feels like a different life, a different man, but it wasn't. It was me. Just an earlier version, the version that learned you can be pushed down but still choose to rise. The version that discovered forgiveness is stronger than hatred. The version that refused to let betrayal define the story. I'm writing a second book, not about the trial or the betrayal, about recovery. About building a life after your family destroys you. It's slower going, harder to write. Because recovery isn't dramatic. It's just days stacking into weeks, into months, into years. But it's important work. Maybe more important than the first book. This morning, I got a letter from Patricia. I haven't opened it yet. It sits on my desk, unopened. Maybe I'll read it tonight, maybe tomorrow, maybe never. That's the thing about recovery. You get to choose. You get to decide which ghosts to face and which to leave unexamined. Right now, I choose the ocean. I walk down to the shore, shoes in hand, letting waves cover my feet. The water is cold but not frightening. Water can't scare me anymore. I've been to the bottom and come back. I stand there as the sun sets, painting the sky in impossible colors, and I think about Rachel. About how she'd love this view. This peace. This hard-won quiet. I made it, I tell her silently. I survived. I'm okay. The ocean answers with another wave, another moment, another breath. That's enough. That's everything. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, thank you. Your time is precious. Your attention is a gift. And if this story taught you anything, let it be this. You are stronger than the people who hurt you. You can survive betrayal. You can build a life from ruins. You can choose forgiveness without reconciliation, strength without bitterness, survival without victimhood. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. Be the voice that reminds them they can breathe again. Subscribe if this resonated. Not for me, but as a reminder to yourself that your story isn't over. It's just beginning. The ocean keeps moving, so do we.